Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to welcome Mr. Sabyasachi Majumdar, Senior Vice President and Group Head, Corporate Ratings, ICRA Limited, to take us through the inaugural presentation for today on FGD cost, economics, tariff impact, and implementation progress. Requesting Mr. Majumdar to please turn his camera on and join us as I introduce him with a few more words to my attendees and the co-panelists present with us today. A senior vice president and group head corporate sector ratings, Mr. Majumdar has been associated with ICRA for over 2 decades. He is responsible for ratings in the corporate and infrastructure sector, specializing in power, renewable energy, engineering, sugar, oil and gas, chemicals and fertilizers, port and telecom sectors. To his credit is the development of ICRA's rating and grading methodology for solar energy system integrators, renewable energy companies, and energy efficiency service companies. Mr. Majumdar was also responsible for carrying out the integrated rating of state-owned discoms on behalf of the Ministry of Power and PFC-REC for the period of 2013 to 2020. He has also served as part of the CII National Committee on Renewable Energy. His previous experience includes a short stint with HCL Group. Mr. Majumdar is an MBA from IIM Lucknow and a BA in Electronics and Communication Engineering from the Delhi College of Engineering. Mr. Majumdar, over to you from here to take the session forward.
Thank you very much, Shale, for the kind introduction. And I'd like to begin by thanking CE for giving us this opportunity for sharing our perspective on the FGD system. Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see your screen. You would have to go to the slideshow mode.
Yes. So
Yes,
I have a
perfect.
brief presentation on the FGD implementation, cost, economics, and tariff impact, which I expect to last for about 15 to 20 minutes. And after that, I'll be free to take any questions. So basically, as far as my agenda is concerned, I've divided into 5 parts. First is the role of coal-based capacity in India, which basically brings out the centrality of thermal generation, at least in the near foreseeable future. Then overview of the revised environmental norms, what has been the progress in terms of implementation, timeline extensions which have been given, and the investment requirement and tariff implications. So if you look at it, the coal-based capacity continues to have a dominant share of the generation capacity, and consequently, it has a very significant impact on the environment. If you see in terms of the total, coal-based capacity, while in percentage term, it has come down from about 57% in March 2018 to 51% in 2023. But in terms of the actual generation mix, it continues to have a lion's share and having marginally only declined from 76% to 73%. Obviously, because thermal power plants have a higher PLF factor compared to the renewable energies, which have a very relatively low PLF factor. The pitfall of a higher share of coal-based generation is emission of pollutants such as sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, particulate matters, and other emission norms. Of course, apart from this, there's the overbearing factor also of the fact that thermal generation is carbon negative in the sense that carbon positive in the sense that it adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere and is responsible for greenhouse effect. So as per the IEA study in 2015, the power sector contributes almost 50% of the annual SOx emission, about 30% of the NOx emission, and 8% of the overall particulate matter emission in the country. The share of coal-based capacity will continue to remain the major source of generation over the coming decade. While we expect that the share of renewable energy generation has gone up from 8% to 14% and will further go up in the coming years, but in terms of the actual generation mix, if you're looking at it in terms of the actual generation, even in a somewhat optimistic scenario, thermal would still continue to have more than 60% of the total generation in 2030, while renewable energy will be 28% and hydro will be 8%. In fact, lately, there has been an improvement in the overall thermal PLF, which has increased to 64% in 2023 as compared to 59% in 22. And we expect that the thermal PLF to cross 65%. However, the PLF would remain under pressure over the long term, given the growing share of RE in the generation mix. But again, 61%, and mind you that the generation itself will be much higher, more than 50 to 60% higher in 2030 compared to what is there. So in absolute amount, the amount of thermal generation which will take place and the coal which will be used in our thermal power sector will be higher than what we are seeing right now, which means that various sources of pollution, including carbon oxide NOx, will continue to be quite significant in the near foreseeable future. Now let's look at what have been the revised environmental norms. So basically, the Ministry of Environment and Forest had come out with new norms, basically for norms for sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, mercury, etc. And they had divided the entire fleet of thermal power plants into three buckets. One basically before 2003, one installed between 2004 to 2016, and one implemented post 2017. Further, they had made unit sized based classification as well. So as you can see, for units which are set up before December 2003, the norm was 600, but those installed between 2004 to 16 and post 2017, the norms are much more strict, that brought down to 200 and 100. Sorry, greater than 500 was 200 units. It has been kept at 200 units, but all units which have to be implemented post 2017, they have to bring it down to 100. Similarly, for nitrogen, the figures were at 600 mg per meter cube, 300 for 4 and 16, and 100 for the latest cohort. Similarly, for freshwater usage also, they have made the norms more strict, and for particulate matters. The new norms will impact aggregate coal-based capacity of around 240 gigawatts. We are, however, excluding from this the stressed private sector capacity, which is under construction and about which the visibility of the completion and operations is limited. This 240 gigawatt consists of operational capacities of 212 gigawatt and under development capacity of 28 gigawatts. However, coal-based plants that have exceeded the design life of 25 years would face technical and financial challenges in complying with the revised norms. Now let's look at the overall progress. The progress in implementation has remained rather modest. Out of the 212 gigawatts or so which were to be subject to this implementation, feasibility study has been completed for 69%, NIT has been issued for 61%, bids have been awarded for 47%, and the actual commissioning is only about 9 gigawatts, which is 4% of the installed capacity. This is owing to a mix of issues which include regulatory approval delays, challenges in securing financing, and availability of suppliers. Nonetheless, the implementation by the central owned power units has been progressing at much faster pace compared to the private and state sector unit. And much of that will be because of financing challenges, for which will come later. The FGD installation deadline has been extended further by 24 months. Basically, there was an MOEF order in September 2022, which basically divided all these projects into three categories, which is A, B, C, and also they had, which basically are based on location. A being the most critical in the sense that within 10-kilometer radius, so in CR or cities with 1 million population. B category being within 10-kilometer radius of critically polluted areas or non-attainment cities, and all remaining units. So basically, they have given a fair amount of relaxation. Now for retiring units for the A category is 2024, non-retiring units 2024, and for B and C, further extension to 25, 26, and 27 based on the bucket delay. And it has been actually 7 years since the notification in December 2015. The overall progress in compliance has remained slow. And as we have discussed in the previous slide, only about 47% of the installed capacity the bid for supply and installation of FGD system has started. So what are the challenges which are being faced in the implementation of revised emission control norms? Firstly, from the power producers' perspective, there is an uncertainty with respect to full recovery of additional capital and operational expenditure to be incurred. While in principle, it has been stated that all costs will be passed through under change in law. But we know that in the past, for various factors, for example, there were power projects which are being set up on domestic coal. They had to shift over to imported coal because domestic coal was not available. And although in principle, it was agreed that they will have to be compensated, it has taken a lot of time to compensate them. So power producers are seeing a lot of uncertainty with respect to that. There will be a loss of revenue during the downtime. There's a reluctance of lenders in extending debt funding. While this may not be a big issue for highly rated entities, particularly those belonging to CPSUs or strong private sector players, but for state-owned units as well as units which are operated by private sector which are under financial stress, there may be a reluctance of lenders in extending debt funding. There's also an inability or lack of willingness of promoters to bring in equity. This is again particularly true for weaker private sector entities and state-owned utilities. Long times are being taken by regulators to process the petition. There's a possibility of downgrade in merit order dispatch. Although to be fair, since everyone is going to be impacted, probably the relative position may not change in the long run. Also, about 72 gigawatts of projects, these are mostly older units of less than 500 megawatts. They face space constraints for installing emission control equipment. There is inadequate availability of raw material, which is basically limestone. Now, obviously, a lot of limestone is available, but not all of that limestone which is available is of a quality which can be used. And there are issues related to the disposal of byproducts. There are import restrictions, inadequate domestic technology and capacity to meet the demand for emission control equipment. From the lender side, they are already saddled with a large stressed asset portfolio in the power sector. There's regulatory uncertainty on tariff implication towards cost to be incurred and mechanism for compensation. Untied PPAs or PPAs not extending over the entire useful life of emission control equipment. That also creates uncertainty in the mind of lenders as to whether they should lend or not. And finally, from the perspective of the procurers, there will be an increase in tariff post-implementation, and they will also have to ensure continuity of electricity supply during the shutdown phase of the power projects. So what are the investment requirements and impact on tariff? If you look at for FGD system for reduction in SOx emissions, estimated capex, it can widely vary on various factors. Some of them, of course, are internal to the project itself in the sense that, where it is located, what are the infrastructural constraints, what is the distance from limestone, what are the kind of additional infrastructure which has to be created. On the other side, of course, from the supplier side also, the supply demand situation that they are facing is very different. So they may quote widely different, cost for projects. So on a ballpark basis, we believe that for FGD alone, the estimated capex would be somewhere between 60 to 80 lakhs per megawatt. And this would imply an impact on levelized cost of generation of the coal-based unit. But this assumes very fine, interest costs, basically, the kind which is enjoyed by CPSU, about 17 to 20 paise per unit. For most of the, in fact, existing plants in India would need to install an FGD system. And this would have to be passed on by way of tariff increase. And there are additional costs also, like additional energy charges and cost towards the reagent consumption. And in addition, the generating station will have to be shut down for 2 to 3 months for the installation of the FGD system. So what are the various types of FGD systems and O&M costs? So basically, there are 4 main types. wet FGD, seawater FGD, dry FGD, and limestone injection. But again, the suitability is different for different kinds of plants. The wet FGD system are the most efficient in terms of reducing SOx emission norms. However, the capital cost and O&M costs for wet system is relatively higher compared to the sea systems, the other systems. The seawater FGD systems would be suitable for coastal power plants. However, the wet FGD systems are more likely to be suitable for inland coal-based power plants in India. For dry FGD system, as far as I understand, right now it's viable for relatively smaller size units, but recent studies do indicate that it might be feasible to do dry feasible FGD for larger size projects also. But I wouldn't be the best person to comment on that. I'm sure there are a lot of technical sessions where these things can be raised. And as far as O&M costs are concerned, as per a study conducted by an independent agency, the O&M cost for FGD units is estimated at about 5 to 6 lakhs per megawatt per annum. And the wet FGD system would also have to incur costs for reagent, which is limestone, water consumption, and for disposable of the byproduct. Of course, in some cases, if you're able to get good quality limestone, the grade of gypsum will be easily off-taken by the cement industry, but it may not be the case for each and every power plant. In terms of the auxiliary consumption, the installation of UD systems would increase the auxiliary consumption of the power plants, is estimated ranging from 1 to 2% as given by various IPPs and agencies. So what are the compensation mechanism? It has been notified by the CRC for cost incurred on emission control. This was given in August 2021. By and large, they have maintained the similar kind of cost plus norms, with typically, normative, for instance, for CapEx, they're giving a depreciation of 3.6% over 25 years. They have made certain normative assumptions for cost of capital. Then O&M costs are given at 2.5% of the capital cost and escalation of 3.5%. Interest on working capital as per approved norms. For auxiliary consumption, there's an approved formula which has been given. And they will also be providing supplementary energy charge based on landed cost of reagent at the generating station and specific reagent consumption by notified by the CA. While the notification of the scheme is very positive, there are certain gray areas. For instance, it takes a lot of time for these costs to be passed through. Similarly, where the plant has a balanced life of less than 25 years, the returns for the developers could be significantly impacted. And although the useful life of coal-based units can be extended beyond the 25 years, but the availability of adequate PPAs, and given the fact that globally there's a movement away from coal, no one knows whether they will be able to get PPAs and sell power beyond 25 years. And securing debt financing could be a challenge for projects that do not have long-term PPAs. So way forward, and what are the key challenges? Implementation. In terms of implementation, availability of adequate financing avenues remains important. Availability of suppliers with adequate capacity, because a lot of capacities are going to be implemented in a very short window. While the absolute amount of suppliers is there, but if all of that has to be done in a 3 to 4 year window, it will definitely put a strain on the system. Timelines involved in the supply and installation of the FGD system is estimated to be about 18 to 24 months, including the shutdown period. There'll be compensation has to be provided for opportunity cost of shutdown. In terms of technical, many of the older coal-based units are likely to face challenges in non-availability of space. Entities will have to take calls on what is the kind of FGD system that they want to adopt. Availability of limestone, additional lime water requirement, and disposal arrangements will have to be sorted out. And in terms of operations, efficiency of FGD systems is likely to be affected at lower loads, as the system requires a certain level of reagent flow, water flow, and flue gas temperature. And there will be an increase in auxiliary consumption because of FGD, which could impact the overall plant availability. On that note, I end my presentation and hand over the stage to Shriyal for coordinating over.
Thank you so much. I think such presentations set the perfect tone for us, to put an industry context to the entire thing. And of course, when we talk about, the FGD systems and the environment, we've seen how much of it is being pushed at the regulatory level as well now. And there is a lot of intent that we are seeing in the sector as well when it comes to, the industries installing this, adopting it, and getting used to the entire infrastructure development that has to be built around it. Open to the audiences. If any of you have any questions for Mr. Sabyasachi, and if anyone from my co-panelists have the questions, please feel free to put your video on and you may please ask. Yes, Mr. Tyagi, good morning.
Morning, good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Sabyasachi Majumdar, for very crisp presentation. But I have seen one slide where you have shown the revised standard. And you have shown the standard limits for the SOX 0.
Oh, no, that is less than 500 because anyway, nothing is being implemented in this period. So it's not applicable, more like non-applicable.
It is not applicable.
Yes, yes, yes.
So you denote it by 0, no?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake. It should be corrected. Yes.
Okay. I got it now. And then you had also briefed the your schedule of FGD installation as revised by the government. Target dates shifted until 2017. So can you little bit elaborate how much FGD installation has already been taken away, taken by the
so basically 9 gigawatts, if you there's one slide which has all this number, about 9 gigawatts has already been implemented. 9 gigawatts have been already implemented and orders have already been placed for 100 gigawatt plus.
So in percentage,
so we would expect that, so you would expect that these 100 gigawatts for which the orders have already been placed, possibly by late calendar year 2024 or early 25, because it typically takes 18 to 20 months. So 100 gigawatts should definitely be in place by late 2024 or early 2025. And the remaining might spill over to 26, 27. Now, again, the issue is that there are some 30% where feasibility study has not been done. Some of them might also be, weak, very weak IPPs who may not be in a position to carry out this capex. So definitely there will be some units which will be suffering because of that.
Okay. And second, my query is that where this FGD has been installed and are in operational, how the disposal of gypsum is going on? Is it 100% or still there is some?
We don't have specific data on that, but I understand a fair amount of that gypsum is going to cement manufacturers, but we don't have detailed data on that.
Okay. Very good. And do you have any analysis of review of the FGD requirement in some of the thermal power plants, where particularly the old one? So do you think?
No, we don't have detailed number beyond, the fact that there are some 70 gigawatt plants which will struggle to complete an FGD. But beyond that, we don't have any granular details of that.
So are you in dialogue with the Ministry of Power or Ministry of Environment for that purpose?
Okay, so basically, as a rating agency, we are not allowed to have a, recommendatory kind of. So, I mean, if we're in a business where, we had to come out with recommendatory guideline, definitely would have been their dialogue. But as a rating agency, we are not allowed to get into a consulting mode. So typically, we just depend upon the industry and the ministries to get the data. But it is beyond our brief to suggest, how to expedite or, identify issues there.
And at one slide, you have mentioned some challenges in
Yes.
the loan from the uh, banks for the FGD.
Okay.
So what are the major
So basically, if you see
issues?
the entire, power projects, a large percentage of the capacity with the CPSUs, like the NTPC, Neyveli Lignite, and others. Obviously, they are very highly rated, AA to AAA, most of these central government-owned entities. For them, getting the lending for the project will not be a challenge. But if you see a large amount of the 200 gigawatt plus capacities which are in the system, many of them are, owned by very weak, of course, some of them now have been taken over by CPSUs and other stronger private sector groups. But some of them are still owned by groups which have very poor credit rating. Some of them are already in delay. Some of them have actually gone into restructuring. Some of them are non-investment grade credit rating. So for entity, and these entities will also struggle to bring in the equity. See, because of the 100 crore, let's say suppose only 100 crore which goes into capex, 20 to 30 has to be brought in by promoter equity. So such entities will struggle to bring in the promoter equity, and because of concerns about the health, and many of these may not even have a full-time PPA. So for entities like this to get long-term loans from bankers at attractive rates will be a challenge.
Mr. Tyagi, we have a question in the Q&A box as well. Can I take one of it up?
Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, so we have a question from DB Power Limited, Manoj Kumar Panda, and his question is out. FGD commissioning may take 7 days as per our plan with the EPC, but you mentioned that it may take 2 to 3 months of shutdown.
Yeah, so obviously, the IPP, the initial ones, we did have that kind of a time, but obviously, as equipment suppliers as well as IPPs develop, learning curve, obviously that can be brought down. But to the best of my knowledge, it does take some time. But yes, definitely people are going to try to crash it as they become more experienced.
Sure. I believe Mr. Aneja also had some questions which he's put in the chat box. But Mr. Aneja, if you want, you could unmute and put your video on and ask as
There
well.
are some technical questions which I think might be best left for other panelists, because the other panelists I understand who would be more technical. We are more from the financing and regulatory side, so they might be better people qualified to reply to that.
Certainly. But I'll just check if Mr. Aneja has one or two questions. Mr. Aneja, any questions from you?
Okay, ma'am, I have one question regarding NOx. Units installed and commissioned and operational after 1117 should achieve norm of 100 milligram per noble cubic meter of NOx. So what is being done about, because stations are not able to achieve this norm, what is being done about this?
So right now, there was a suggestion of a penalty should be put, but as far as we are aware, that penalty is not being pushed. But at the same time, I understand that, progress is being made by IPPs power producers to get into that. I mean, they are gradually reducing it. But as of now, we are not aware of any penalties being levied for entities which are not applied.
But sir, without SCR, SNCR, it seems very difficult to achieve norm of 100.
Yeah, that's when this whole thing was put. It was believed that SCRs, SCNRs will be required for that. But I understand that entities are trying to achieve it without that. But again, this is a more technical question, and perhaps some technical panelists might be able to answer that. Because you are right that not most of these people have not put up these facilities yet.
Good morning, everyone. Sabyasachi, it is always pleasure to hear from you. You talk on FGD. And I'm sure you have a lot of data by now. My question is, a lot of FGDs have been put, and there are various challenges what we are facing. From financial angle, do you still think that we should be having the approach kind of sab sare ghar ke badal dalunga kind of approach? I mean, because there are some plants, it is a huge burden on the power system. What is happening? Right. We are not thinking. Yesterday also during the discussion, Mr. Sahu was there from CPCB. Though it affects my business, the business which I do, I want more and more FGDs. But as an Indian citizen, I feel sometimes that we are simply beating the bush. I mean, we are simply talking about all the plants should have FGD, all the plants should have SCR, SNCR, irrespective of whether because the power plants are going to flex now to accommodate renewable energy, and when power plants are going to flex, the utilization of FGD is very minimal actually, and it is going to be a huge burden. FGD is no luxury for any power plant. So my suggestion, if anybody is listening from the government, CPCB and any government body, this is the time to do a mid-term review, whether we really need it. We can do many other good things. We are talking about carbon capture. Nothing has happened so far. So my suggestion is, I know you are not able to answer technical questions. Technical questions remain. Earlier it was, NOx emission was prescribed 300 mg per nm cube. Due to obvious reasons, the pilot project failed. We could not, come out of any conclusion. And then it was increased to 450. So this number game probably is not, it is good for you, not for technical people and not for the countrymen. So my suggestion is next time when you present, you talk about something, the burden on the power system and how it can be reduced.
The burden on the power system really is the tariff, See, I mean, from our perspective, as I said, we are not really mandated to speak about whether it's good or bad. I mean, we can, as a rating agency, we can only speak about what is the impact on, let's say, the tariff, overall tariff in the system. So if thermal power is about 20 paisa plus, the cost of reagents, thermal being about 70% of the total offtake, and after taking into the account the T&D losses, any 20 paisa increase in thermal tariff would mean roughly about the same amount of impact on the tariff end tariff to the consumer. So, and obviously, if we have a certain debt to equity ratio, if you are loading another 60 lakhs to 1 crore, depending upon what are the various capex have to do, we can comment on what could be the DSCR and what could be the impact on the gearing. So that is something we can talk about. But again, saying whether this norm should have been there in place or not, frankly speaking, it goes beyond a brief.
All right, we will have a further discussion
Yes,
on this.
Yes, I have been attending such conferences for more than 5 to 6 years. I mean, it is since 2015 itself. And this question has been raised by all, all stakeholders, that whether this is an overkill or this really required. So, views are there on both sides. So I'm aware of the argument.
No, but now, now this question is more pertinent because the notification came in 2015. And today we are sitting in 2023.
Yes.
Almost 8 years, and the progress is very minimal.
Yes.
Hardly 10 FGDs which has seen the light of the day. Rest is all struggling under various challenges. Time overrun, cost overrun, delays, interest by end user to have FGD. So this is the time anyway. I mean, as an Indian citizen, I mean, I understand your role. You are a rating agency, but this is the time to think holistically whether it is really needed. We will have a discussion maybe offline sometime.
Sure.
Yes, we will have to conclude this session. On that note, Mr. Anuj, I have any pending question from you you would like to ask? We could take one more question, otherwise we could end this session.
Sir, my question is, supposing the stations having balance life of say around 10 years, 15 years, let us say 10 years, shall they will be allowed to recovery of entire fixed cost towards FGD system?
See, the simple mathematical way of doing it is that if the plant has a balance life of 10 years, you'll have to amortize it over 10 years. That's a very simple way. You build a model which, let's suppose if you are giving 90% depreciation, then it means a 9% annual depreciation rate. Very simply, and you take a similar amortization of the loan to build the interest schedule. So that is the simple mathematics. Now, what it does to the project economics is a completely different matter. Already the distribution companies are already cash strapped and they are not able to pass on all the cost increases. As to how they will, increase the, absorb the higher tariff is anybody guess. Also, things will have to be taken. There's already for long, there has been discussion that why don't we, close down some of the older power plants because they are more consume more coal and produce more carbon dioxide for every unit of power produced. But at the same time, the reality and that at what point of time it was being taken very seriously. But now there's another reality. We are already seeing, thermal PLFs going above 65%. There are parts of the year when, thermal power plants are going to be run at very high capacity utilization. Under those circumstances, where if, let's say, the energy continues to grow and we don't have a large pipeline of thermal power projects under implementation, until the time pump storage becomes reality on a very large scale, we don't have the way to store the extra, wind and solar energy which we generated. What do we do about the can we risk, brownouts or blackouts? So these are very, involved questions which will have to be addressed by all stakeholders at the highest level.
Here
One
I
last
would
question.
like to
One
add
last
one
question.
thing. Anuja Sahib, I want to say something here.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure whether you come from NTPC.
Yes, sir. I'm ex-NTPC.
You are ex-NTPC.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
in NTPC also, the plant life, which is left around 10 years. Like you have seen NTPC going for the direct sorbent injection technology. So
Yes, sir.
those technologies are cheaper. Those technology are portable. So if the plant life is left 10 years, you need not to go for wet lime FGD, which is a big cost. So NTPC has already done this actually. NTPC has gone for wet lime FGD in most of the plant, and some of the plant, they have gone for DSI also. Theoretically, their plant life was remnant by 10 years. But again, there are many plants which are merchant power plants. Merchant power plant, they are selling power in the exchanges. So definitely adding an FGD, and moreover, the question is, do we really need FGD? That's the question actually. Everywhere, like your own plant, I have been associated with Dusan, like Kudgi. Kudgi does not have any surrounding, around 50 kilometers, there is nothing. So, I mean, just for the discussion sake, why at all? So now this is the time, almost 8 years have gone after, the notification was in place, and huge orders have been placed. I mean, especially NTPC has been the front runner, and being a national power generator, definitely they have taken the lead. But this is the time to rethink whether we need the FGDs, and if at all we need the same technology. Like whatever we adopted, 95% has gone for wet lime FGD. Wet lime FGD itself is a big CO2 producer, which
Yes,
has
sir.
been revealed recently. And yesterday, with Mr. Sahu, one of the CPCB, a very learned person, it was discussed that once we progress through the PAT audits will also have lot of several measures to be implemented in the power plant. So due to that measures, definitely SOx and NOx is going to come down. So it is a time to sit down together, all stakeholder, people like you, me, Sabyasachi, and the government and everybody and the plant owner, because many plant owners are still reluctant. If you see all the big businesses, business houses, they have not gone for FGD so far, because FGD is a perpetual liability. It is not one day. And in one of the forum I was present yesterday, it was being discussed that the plants, like your own plant in area, though Sakti Nagar area, every power plant is going to have a FGD. You can see the situation like Vindhyachal, So the gypsum is much risky and hazardous, not good for health for the human being than fly ash. So this is the time to have a thought of good energy mix, good FGD technology mix, and then we go ahead further.
So, Mr. Verma, sir,
Yes, sir.
I want to add regarding the DSI system, sir. When DSI system was installed, that time, see the cost of the sodium bicarbonate, that is the reagent used, it was around 20,000 per cubic meter. Now
Yeah.
the cost has gone double.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the running cost is very high, FGD, so DSI.
Yeah. And what I understand, Sab, I understand that even the PG test has not been able to do, because DSI is nothing. DSI is basically a material handling. You are simply with some process, you are adding either hydrated lime, or you are adding sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate price today is 32,000 per ton. And moreover, the problem is it affects the fly ash quality. Many a times fly ash is not sellable to the cement plant. Many cement plants are reluctant to buy it. So challenges are many. And then if it cannot be used, you have to go for landfill. And for having a landfill, again, it is not eco-friendly approach. We are making the land, which is the barrel land, you have to pay money to the government. So issues are, quite, it's a very chain, kind of chain reaction of one wrong decision in many ways. So DSI is something not, a very proven technology, and but there are some orders recently happened for those plants which has a very short life, but it's a challenge.
Sir, one last question, sir.
Boliye, sir.
Mr. Majumdar, last question, sir. Regarding, sir, why these plants located near sea are opting for seawater-based FGD?
See, in some of these areas, some of these areas, availability of freshwater itself will be a bit of a challenge. So they will have to go in for seawater as well as, desalination. It's more a question of resource availability rather than choice.
Yeah, I'm asking, sir, because NTPC stations, Vallur and Simadri, they are not going for seawater FGD. They're going for wetstone limestone FGD.
Yeah, so it's as I said, it's a decision which will have to be made by the individual players as to what works out cheapest.
And sir, one last question, sir, why ammonia-based FGD is not being used in India?
I am not aware of that, as I said.
Ammonia, Anuja साहब, दो सवाल मैं आपके जवाब दे देता हूँ. Why NTPC has gone for seawater FGD? Why not? Because it depends on the water quality also. Salinity and alkalinity of water is also important. Sea does not mean that wherever there is a sea, the water is same. So that is the reason NTPC decided not to go for seawater FGD, because it was not suitable for scrubbing sulfur. Coming to second question, why not ammonia? Why not, any other technology? Because initially, when CEA came in the picture, they have been presented only two technology, wet lime and seawater. Though, if you see many power purchase agreement issued by CERC, they themselves have said that you think about having a sorbent catalyst polymer based technology. There are many, like if you see Tata Jojo Bera order of tariff, their CRC and CEA themselves said. So now it is the customer's decision. CRC and CEA has no reservation for, they are technology agnostic, they are vendor agnostic. They have nothing to say on the technology front, but it is between the technology provider and the end user to agree on something and go to the CRC and CEA. And I think hopefully they will approve it. They have no problem.
So my query was, sir, regarding why not even a single station in India has opted for ammonia-based FGD. While it has...
No. The reason is, one is ammonia handling is very tough. For ammonia handling, you need a lot of licensing. I know companies, they tried. Another problem was there were not many such proven technology. Like NTPC, that nothing they take without the provenness. Somewhere it has worked already. Now, ammonia, power plant can never be a gypsum board manufacturing company or a brick manufacturing company or ammonia manufacturing. So ammonia manufacturing, ammonia is a hazard, Ammonia handling, like SCR and SNCR itself, has been a big question because both require ammonia, aqueous or non-aqueous.
Yes, yes.
So ammonia, its handling is a problem in our country. But I think if the technology is good, definitely they should go for something other than wet lime and seawater, because we need to have a mix.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think we would have to end this session. Our
Yes,
next
thank you so
session,
much.
we
I
have
need
Mr.
to step
Verma
out
joining
now.
us again with this presentation, and we want to keep up to our timelines. Mr. Sabyasachi, thank you so much for joining us. It's always information that we look forward to from ICRA, and we get that with complete justice to it. And thank you for patiently answering the questions. I know you said you don't come from the technical side, and yes, we do have a lineup of a lot of technical sessions. So I'm sure a lot of these questions can get answered in the sessions to come as well today. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
Truly
very much. Yeah.
appreciate it.